What helps you to stay humble before God and others? This lesson allows us to see the work of Christ in Philippians 2, verses 1 through 11, follow Christ's example of humility and sacrifice, and grow in our ability to place the needs of others before our own. As Philippians chapter 1 ends with a confession of what God accomplished through Christ for believers, resulting in a charge to suffer joyfully like the imprisoned Paul, Philippians chapter 2 explains how the Philippians should do this. Delivering what scholars consider the Philippian hymn, Paul lifts up the example of Jesus, drawing on the Christological doctrines of Christ's preexistence, his divinity and humanity, his subject and obedience to the Father, his suffering on the cross, and his resurrection to accomplish salvation for all humankind. Paul uses Christ's humility as exhibited in his earthly ministry as a model for believers to embrace and embody as individuals for the benefit and unity of the entire community, which brings us to our key verse for today, which reads, "Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourselves." Philippians chapter 2, verse 3. Paul is setting up to say, if you have experienced the tender mercies and compassion of the Lord, then respond accordingly and show it by living out your lives. What would make Paul's joy complete is if the Philippians were united in love and in mind, with humility, without selfishness, but caring for one another. Love is the cord that binds friends, families, fellowships, and churches together. Quite simply, any group that lacks love lacks unity. Therefore, mutual love, such as shown by Christ's sacrificial death for the church, should pervade every Christian community. Paul says imperatively, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, meaning do not oppose one another by acting selfishly for personal gain. While we cannot copy Christ's work of salvation, we can copy the spiritual basis to these acts, his love, humility, and servitude to others. These are the attitudes or disposition which was also in Christ Jesus. Saying that Jesus existed in the form of God is probably a subtle way of affirming the divine nature of Christ, that he possessed the very nature of God, without saying plainly that Christ was God. Although he was equal with God in his divine nature, Jesus did not think this equality as something to be seized upon or to be held fast or held on to. That means that Jesus possessed the divine nature and was by all accounts equal with God and had the right to hold tight to it and use it to his own advantage. To be in the form of God or possessing the divine nature, and for that matter being equal with God, is a position of honor, respect, and pride with many advantages, a position no mere human could ever want to give up. But contrary to this human evaluation, Christ did not view his equality with the Father as a position to greedily and selfishly hold on to, but he used it for the benefit of others. Paul clearly states that rather than holding tight to his divine nature and equality with God, Christ voluntarily made himself of no reputation. While on earth, although he was and is and ever remains God, the Son laid aside all these things while retaining his divine nature and functioned as a human as he assumed human form. Jesus entered the stream of human life as a slave, a person without advantage, with no rights or privileges of his own, for the express purpose of placing himself completely at the service of humanity. In serving people, he was serving God, and in taking the role of a slave, he was acting in obedience to God's will. Paul continues to describe the thought of Jesus' humility as shown not only by his assuming human form in the role of a servant, but by humbling himself to such a degree of acceptance and subjecting himself to the most humiliating type of death, crucifixion. This, Paul seems to convey, is the lowest step of humility. Jesus' obedience has no limits, which brings us to our lesson. Jesus humbled himself, therefore he was exalted, which follows the natural and divine order of things taught by Jesus Christ himself. Paul gives us a two-part purpose for Christ's exaltation and bestowal of the highest name. The name is now bestowed to the historical Jesus, who humbled himself to the lowest depth, took up the role of a slave, and became human in time and space. He who was obedient even to death is to be obeyed and worshipped. The exaltation of Jesus to the utmost heights, giving him the highest name ever imaginable, and proclaiming Christ as Lord by all people, has one ultimate goal: the glory of the Father. Thus, when the Son is glorified, the Father is also